Today I'm going to show you how to make this picture frame. I used a miter saw, a router, and a couple of hand tools. But you can really adapt these instructions to any kind of tools that you have. It's a pretty simple frame, but I'll go over all the steps I did to make it. In this video I used some power tools, power miter saw, and also brad nailer, router table. So I always use hearing protection and eye protection. And occasionally, when there's a lot of dust in the air, I'll also use a dust mask. So I started off with an 8-foot length of 2x2 S4S pine, which is a finished dimension of 1.5 by 1.5. And it's surfaced 4 sides, so it's pretty smooth. My overall dimensions are about 20 by 16. So what I did is use a miter saw and chop that 8-foot piece down into 4 smaller pieces that are slightly larger than that overall finished dimension of the frame. This next step can be done a variety of ways, but overall what you want to do is cut a rabbet in one corner of each of the pieces for your artwork to sit in. The way I did it is with a router table, and I'll show you that. The method I'm using involves a rabbeting bit and a router table. You can do this easily without a router table. You can also do it with a table saw, a bunch of different ways. But I used a router bit with only a portion of it revealed. And so what I did was, with the face facing up and the inside of the frame facing the fence, I ran it through, and you can see how it routed out that rabbeting profile. What I'm going to do is successively raise this bit up and up and up until I've routed quite a bit of a rabbet in there, and those will be the next steps that I do. See, there it is. Okay, we're going back to the miter saw now. You can see my layout. I've marked the angles, and what I'll do is cut all those at a 45, but I'll go kind of consecutively, so I'll start cutting one corner and then see how that fits. So I've cut the first miter, and it fits pretty well. Now I'm going to measure each of these pieces to length and cut the other miter on the other end. And what I'm going to do is measure from the inside at this point to the inside at that point, because that's the size of the glass and mat and everything, and I want to make sure that that will fit as well with as little play as possible. So I moved on to the second corner, and how I'm going to go about doing this and how I did this one is I took this new piece and cut it at 45. Then I took this other piece and cut it at 45, but I left it longer than the finished dimension. That way I could check it for square. Use a square and check and see when it's tight, how it looks. And what I did was fine-tune this angle about 3/4 of a degree until I got it square. And at that point it was still too long. So once I got that angle dialed in, a little bit less than 45, I actually just moved the piece over and cut it to length. And now I know that that angle's right. It's 45, or it's 90 degrees inside, and it's cut to the right length. So started with this one, moved to this one, now I'll just keep going around that same way. Okay, I've cut all of the miters and fit them all together, changing the angle to 44 or 46 or so when I needed to. Next step is to glue them all together. Fastening the corners together is another one of those things that there are a lot of different ways to do. What I'm going to do is put glue on each face here and use a brad nailer to hold it together. Here it is all glued up. So I glued it up and then used the brad nailer to put brads through the ends. So you've got a little bit of holes, but they're not that noticeable. And I think the joints turned out fairly well. The next step is to do a little sanding to clean those corners up a little bit more. Here's a close-up of what the corners look like. So you can see there's a little bit of finishing work to do with a sanding block and a random orbital sander. So that's what I'm going to do next. You can see where the brads are positioned in the corners. The front is held pretty tight together. Some of the back corners you can see are open a little bit, but as long as the front looks pretty good, you should be in good shape. Okay, I used the sander and the sanding block and some sandpaper and also a sharp chisel to clean up all the corners, clean up glue, sand down so every corner is smooth now, which is basically finishes up the frame. I have another video on how I stained this, so please check that out.